Well, I only got 5 wrong last week, which is 5 more points than the Raiders scored last week. Grassy Posse Packer Nation. Welcome to an episode of Podcast, a podcast where you don't have to Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom. Yeah, I don't know anymore. Grassy, and today we are going to be breaking down and predicting every single game in Week 9 of the NFL. Bunch of teams on a bye week this upcoming week. Last week I went 10-5. Here are the games that I got wrong. 74-48 on the year, though I should be 75-47, but due to an error I was not. But that's neither here nor there. But instead we're going to get started off with Thursday night's game. You got the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Houston Texans. The Eagles, the only undefeated team left in the entire NFL. Jalen Hurts absolutely crushed it last week. A.J. Brown, 3 touchdowns in the first half. Meanwhile, the Texans, yeah, they lost a game to the Tennessee Titans, who barely had a QB, only had to attempt 10 passes, and Derrick Henry absolutely destroyed them. The Eagles' defense was playing well before they added Robert Quinn, and now he's just going to add another layer to get after the quarterback. Some analysts have said he's not been having his best season. However, he is getting double-teamed a lot, so we'll see how Robert Quinn can do in Philly's scheme. And, oh yeah, they have Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. This should not be a fun game for any Houston Texans fan. Hopefully Texans fans can just go out and find something else to do on Thursday night, because this game ain't going to be it. The Eagles are going to win. Following that, you got the LA Chargers taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Chargers having a nice bye week last week, so they didn't have to give their fans either disappointment or a heart attack. Meanwhile, the Falcons have now become the #1 overall team in the NFC South, leading that division after an insane game with the Carolina Panthers that went back and forth, went into overtime, but they got it done. The Falcons, as I have said almost every single week, have surprised basically everybody in the NFL, and I think even their own fans. They've been playing tough every single week, and now they're the only team in that division without a losing record. Yeah, they're only at 500, but hey, who doesn't love a good underdog story? The Chargers, they're just inconsistent right now. Justin Herbert has been playing with an injury. They've had injuries along the offensive line. They've had injuries to the receiving core, and they just need to kind of have one good game. I think the Chargers, coming off a bye, people should be a little bit more healthy, and because of that, I am going to give the Chargers the win here, though don't be surprised if the Falcons wind up taking it down to the wire. Then you got the Miami Dolphins taking on the Chicago Bears. The Dolphins, in a close matchup with another NFC North opponent, the Detroit Lions last week, but then decided in the second half, oh wait, we're a really good team. The Dolphins offense, hot damn, they're just going ludicrous speed with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is absolutely tearing it up in this league. The guy is basically on track to destroy every receiving record there is. Yes, they got rid of an underperforming Chase Edmonds, but they reunited Jeff Wilson Jr. with Mike McDaniel, so should be an easy transition for him in that offense. On top of that, their defense has been playing well and should continue to do so with the new addition of Bradley Chubb. The Dolphins have capitalized on the insane value of the trade with the San Francisco 49ers, turning it into fantastic players, and with both sides of the ball having weapons, these Dolphins are prepared for a playoff run. Meanwhile, the Bears, I gotta give them some credit. These past 2 weeks, they've been playing pretty darn good football. Yes, they lost against the Dallas Cowboys this past week, but Justin Fields has looked pretty good. It looks like Luke Getsy is like, wait a minute, we have a mobile QB. Maybe we should actually cater the offense to him. And they've been playing well. Yes, they traded away Roquan Smith, which is not going to help that defense, but they were likely not going to pay him. And if you're the Bears, you're just hoping to find out if you have your franchise QB or not. And if not, you have a ton of draft capital and cap space to try and go get one next year. Or if you do, and it looks like Justin Fields these past 2 weeks is their guy, then you can surround him with a bunch of weapons. and Chase Claypool. But in all honesty, the Bears have a ton of capital and also cap space next year, so they can afford to send a second-round pick to the Steelers to see if Chase Claypool could be a new favored weapon for Justin Fields. For this week, though, the Dolphins are a better football team, and even though it is being played in Soldier Field, I have Miami taking this. Then you got a battle of the kitty cats. You got the Carolina Panthers taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. The Panthers had the game. They would have been the top of the NFC South. An amazing performance, especially at the end of the game by PJ Walker, DJ Moore catching the tying touchdown, however, committing a penalty, taking his helmet off, which forced the extra point back. Eddie Pinheiro missed that. He also missed the kick in overtime, and eventually they fell to the Falcons. Meanwhile, the Bengals, an embarrassing performance against the Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football. That offensive line looked abysmal. Not only were they missing Jamar Chase, but the biggest thing is that they just couldn't get anything going. Joe Burrow making mistakes. There was fumbles. There were interceptions. And you just got to get that guy some protection. This game, the Panthers really don't have too bad of a defense, but I think the Bengals should be able to bounce back a little bit. The problem with Cincinnati is they have just been inconsistent this entire year. So even if they win this game, I really don't know if they're going to be good for the rest of the season, but I see them picking up the win here. Then you got the Green Bay mother-loving Packers taking on the Detroit Lions. The Packers losing their fourth straight game against the Buffalo Bills this past Sunday night, though there is definitely room for optimism in that they were running the ball really well. The deep throw was on. Romeo Doubs had some great catches. On top of that, Samori Toure had his first touchdown, and the defense held the Bills to 3 points in the second half and forced 2 turnovers. So they have laid the foundation and the blueprint for them to succeed in the future, though Matt LaFleur is definitely going to be combing the playbook to hopefully scheme some wide receivers open.
We ain't found.
Meanwhile, the Lions, in a very competitive bout with the Miami Dolphins, as we just talked about, they were able to hold their own until the second half, in which the offense just collapsed and the defense did not look good. The Lions are obviously not a great football team. They just fired their defensive backs coach. The Lions sold off one of their best players in TJ Hawkinson at the deadline yesterday, getting some draft capital as they are going to go after what is likely to be a franchise QB in next year's draft. They don't have a defense right now, so getting rid of TJ, while it does hurt their offense, it's not like they're going anywhere this season. And on top of that, they're dealing with a ton of injuries. Now, I will say a lot of people are saying, hey, Tom, don't worry, it's the Lions. This is your bounce back week. I thought the same exact thing against the Commanders. That did not come to fruition. I think this game will be closer than some people anticipate, though just for my own sanity, I'm going to pick the Packers to end their losing streak here, because if they don't, God help me. Then you got the Indianapolis Colts taking on the New England Patriots. The Colts. Well, I mean, Sam Ehlinger didn't look too bad. Everything else did, though. The defense, they were covering Scary Terry, but still able to make a miraculous catch. And the Commanders able to pull off a last-second win against the Colts. And that franchise, just yikes. Not looking so good right now. But they just fired their offensive coordinator, so maybe that helps. Meanwhile, the Patriots able to get the W against the Jets, even though they allowed Mac Jones to die back there. Their run game is really, really good. And Mac Jones, even though, again, he was beaten up and sacked a whole bunch of times, still looked pretty good in this game. The Patriots, I think, are the better team here. I think they got the better defense. They have the better run game. And that's going against Jonathan Taylor, who has just not looked the same. He's gotten banged up all season. So because of that, I'm going to pick the Patriots to win in what will probably be a low-scoring game. And the Colts, the QB carousel will probably continue. Then you have an AFC East matchup between the Buffalo Bills and the New York Jets. The Bills, as we just talked about, had a rough second half against the Green Bay Packers, but did more than enough to win that football game. Still look like the best team in football. On top of that, the Jets, they're struggling. Zach Wilson, for the past couple of weeks, has not looked good. Yes, they won against the Broncos, but not anything to do with Zach Wilson. That defensive line and, of course, that secondary of the Jets is one of the best in football right now, though I don't think that's going to be enough to contain the Bills. The Bills with Josh Allen and all those weapons just are going to be too much for this defense to handle, and I think the defense is probably going to decimate Zach Wilson, considering they are missing some key offensive linemen. So I'm going to pick the Bills to continue their win streak and continue their dominance in the NFL. Following that, you got the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Washington Commanders. Both teams coming away with a win. The Vikings continue their win streak as they are leading in the NFC North. Kirk Cousins went from shopping at Kohl's to now being the flyest QB in the league, and everything about it I absolutely hate. Based off a strong run game and, of course, Justin Jefferson, they've been playing well. Zadarius Smith has been the best pickup for the Minnesota Vikings in this offseason. And they just got another huge pickup from a division rival in TJ Hawkinson, which makes them even better and makes me want to die. Meanwhile, the Commanders, they've won their past few games, and no one expected that. They're at 500 right now. Maybe Taylor Heineke is going to give Kirk Cousins and the Vikings a little bit of trouble, but this is a game that I think the Vikings should win. Though if it's up to me, the Vikings will lose in embarrassing fashion. But because I can't have nice things this season, the Vikings will win. Then you got the Vegas Raiders taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars in what might be a tank bowl. The Raiders scored 0 points against the New Orleans Saints last week. Devontae Adams was held to 1 catch for 3 yards. Derek Carr did not look good. And the Raiders are just not a well-coached football team right now.
You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
Meanwhile, the Jaguars hitting a new low, losing to the Denver Broncos in London, which is basically a home game for you guys, considering how much you play there. Trevor Lawrence looking like Prince Valium from Spaceballs back there, and everybody just is probably going to yawn at this game. Both of these teams are struggling. The Raiders are inconsistent, though if they rely on Josh Jacobs, which they should do, I think they'll be able to win this game. The Jaguars are kind of in free fall right now. I look for that to continue, and maybe the Raiders will be able to pull off a win if they call a decent game plan. Then you got a battle of the birds. You got the Seattle Seahawks versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Seahawks, they are just basically the epitome of Big Brother. Expect the unexpected. They are doing pretty darn well, leading the NFC West right now. Geno Smith playing well, even though Kenneth Walker really couldn't find a lot of running lanes last week, and you had receivers making mistakes. Looking at you, Tyler Lockett. The Seahawks were able to get it done against the Giants, and their defense was nothing to shake your finger at either. Meanwhile, the Cardinals, while they're able to battle back bit by bit, Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins were basically the only 2 players that were keeping them in that game. Cliff Kingsbury is not the answer there. The defense was struggling. They have no run game besides their mobile QB, and yeah, the Cardinals just don't look like a good team this year. I picked the Seahawks to win because they're not making a lot of mistakes, they're being consistent, and they're playing balanced football, and I think that'll continue in Week 9. Then you got the LA Rams taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, last year in the divisional round, Matt Stafford pulled off a great win against Tom Brady, and now both of these teams suck. The Rams losing to Christian McCaffrey. Oh, and the 49ers were there too, as McCaffrey was able to rush in for a touchdown, throw a touchdown, and get a receiving touchdown. But their offensive line has struggled. Stafford is dealing with some weird injury, and it just does not look the same. Meanwhile, the Buccaneers, doesn't look like Tom Brady playing, but instead his stunt double. The Buccaneers have been weird all year. Their offensive line is struggling. They have no run game to speak of. And honestly, the Rams and Buccaneers are a very similar team this year. Their defense is underperforming. Their offense isn't looking good. And this might just be a terrible game. I'm going to pick the Buccaneers to win. I just don't trust the Rams offensive line, and maybe the defense of the Bucs will be able to get after the QB. But yeah, there's no confidence in that, just like I don't have confidence in either of these teams right now. Then on Sunday Night Football, you got the Tennessee Titans taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Titans have quietly gotten a 5-game win streak. They were able to beat the Houston Texans last week solely because of Derrick Henry. Who knows if Ryan Tannehill is going to play on Sunday night, but Malik Willis just had to hand the ball off a whole bunch and attempt to throw the ball 10 times. Meanwhile, the Chiefs, coming off a bye week, they look like the second best team in the AFC. High-flying offense, they were able to decimate their opponent a couple of weeks ago. I feel like the Chiefs, this is being played in Arrowhead, have a major advantage here. They should be able to take care of the Titans, who, while they're not a bad team, I don't think they're a very good team. So because of that, the Chiefs should be able to take care of business. And finally, on Monday Night Football, you got the Baltimore Ravens taking on the New Orleans Saints. And this game is really intriguing because neither fan base has any idea which team is going to show up. The Ravens, they've been inconsistent all year, though they were able to take down Tom Brady and the Buccaneers this past Thursday night. The Ravens were able to trade for Roquan Smith, which should help that defense and hopefully be able to get after the quarterback a little bit more and just make that defense better. And also they have guys returning from injury who they definitely need. Meanwhile, the Saints, 1 week, they look terrible. The next week, they look amazing. And they pitch a shutout against the Raiders. I just don't know who's going to win this football game. It's being played at home in New Orleans. Kamara tore it up last week and might be able to tear it up against this Ravens defense. But Lamar Jackson is always a wild card. It's just a matter of which Lamar Jackson's going to show up. I'm going to pick the Ravens here just because I think they've been a little bit more consistent this year to get the win, though it would not surprise me if the Saints were able to take care of business considering what they did to Devontae Adams and the Raiders last week. But I'm going to go with the Ravens here, but this should actually make for a good primetime Monday night game, which we are desperately owed. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. How do you think these games are going to shake out in week 9? Let me know. You can always find me at TomGrassiComedy.com or TomGrassiComedy, all social media you see down below. Check out podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and of course YouTube. And a big shout out and thank you to all the patrons over at patreon.com/TomGrassiComedy and the YouTube members. But thank you so much for watching. I'm Tom Grassi. And as always, go Pack Go.